We'll be covering the lore of the transdimensional era roleplay forums in this video. There's a lot of information, so it will be split between 2 or more videos. Once all the videos are out, the roleplay forums will finally open to, at the very least, the construction crew and Patreon members. Those who do not donate will have to wait for a little longer as the forums are being prepared. This video in lore mentions uncomfortable themes such as early death, slow death, death in general, violence, hazardous living conditions, child neglect, childhood trauma, loss of family, sacrificial punishment, being eaten alive, animal cruelty, shunning, banishment, unfair fights, talk of unfounded rumors, theft, assassination, murder, public torture, loss of home, homelessness, natural disaster aftermath, horrifying scenarios, and betrayal. Viewer discretion is advised. Sil'nyy could be part of the dragon or Magillus classes. Sil'nyy are frequently the tallest of the races of Nova, excluding the rare cases of the much larger Tlakaelel. Their height can easily reach anywhere between 7 foot 2 inches to 8 foot 10. This height is normally accompanied by well-defined or, at the very least, obvious muscles. It doesn't matter what gender the Sil'nyy is, as they are a naturally quite beefy race. Biological sex also determines unique features between male and female. Although both genders have tusks protruding upwards from their bottom jaws, females' tusks are much smaller than the males. Men of this race have curled horns varying in width, length, and texture, while the female has none. While the women of the Sil'nyy race have eyebrows, the males' brows have a row of small studs, made of the same material as their horns. The women also have a slightly more slender jaw than the men. Unlike most races, the Sil'nyy skin tones have a large range of colors, featuring different tints and shades of the rainbow. The skin tones that Sil'nyy can be born with include the following colors: shades of white and grays, reddish orange to a pale peach, a muted dark brown to a light brown, multiple shades of both blue and green. Children can inherit the same exact color and shade as either of the parents, but also have the potential to be born with the same color and shade as one of their grandparents. Although they are born with a full head of hair, Sil'nyy hair starts to naturally recede regardless of gender. This results in what looks like large foreheads. A traditional hairstyle among the race is shaving the sides of the head, leaving their thick hair at the top and often growing it out to either tie back into a ponytail or braid, or letting their hair turn into natural dreadlocks. Sometimes their hair can do multiple things, depending on their heritage. Sil'nyy are not all that great with magic power-wise, with the exception of their race-exclusive magic, Fog Brain. This type of magic will let them turn off their natural senses to block out pain and exhaustion, allowing them to continue in a fight when they would have normally yielded to their opponent. It's very dangerous for both the opponent and the Sil'nyy that uses it. If a Sil'nyy is not careful, this can result in high amounts of blood loss leading to death. Thankfully, this magic can only last about 3 minutes before the Sil'nyy crashes, quickly followed by a drunk-like state in which the Sil'ny's words become slurred and their mind and body slow down. Between the competitive fighting nature of a Sil'nyy and their usage of their fog-brained race-exclusive magic, and even environmental factors, most Sil'nyy don't live past their mid-30s, at the latest, sometime much earlier, depending on how lacking their immune systems are. This doesn't mean that a Sil'nyy can't have a long life. Outside of these factors, should a Sil'nyy grow up in a different environment, Sil'nyy have been known to live as old as 312 years of age. This is not an average. However, their bodies do not deteriorate and they keep their strength, even when they're on the verge of death due to old age. Physically, however, they could look like just any scrawny old man or woman when they're at older ages. The Sil'nyy have a continent all to themselves as known as Thu'mak's Domain, west of the continent of Selgamed. The name itself derives from their beliefs, named after a Sil'nyy warlord that may or may not have actually existed. There are 5 main locations where the Sil'nyy live, one of which is a mixed city where those who wish to test their strength can gather for competition. The other 4 locations are villages where individual clans, based on last names that they were either born into or given, live. Outside of these 5 locations, there are Sil'nyy who live in undisclosed homesteads scattered throughout Thu'mak's Domain, and some even on other continents depending on their crimes, that they were either born into or banished to by the Sil'nyy government. Central City is located smack dab in the middle of the continent. It is, as its name suggests, the center of all Sil'nyy. It's fortified by a giant wall made of massive log stakes to help protect it from any invaders that intend harm to its citizens. The only way in is a massive gate made of the same log stakes as the walls and is attached to a pulley system that, once cranked, will lift the bottom of the gate outwards so that visitors and citizens alike cross under. There are wooden watchtowers along the wall and at both sides of the entrance so that the Sil'nyy would know if it were friend or foe at their gate. Inside the city itself, there are many houses with stone foundations and log cabins built on top. The roofing is made of a multitude of wavy metal sheets and the gable and or slanted flat stiles. There isn't much foliage around, and the few places that flora can be located is usually at the walls, where they have yet to be trampled on. At the center of the city is a stadium of stone surrounded by many tents for those who wish to join the competition of strength. Hognur'Gor is a small village situated west of Central City in the marshlands. This village can only be accessed by boat and is built atop intersecting docks and bridges in the middle of waist-deep waters and surrounded by cypress trees. Most of the housing here is made up of wooden boards and straw hip roofs. There is a fish market on a slightly raised platform and stairs leading into the water, where boats are often tied and stored for safekeeping when not in use. There are a lot of taverns, both outdoors and indoors. Fishermen often use the docks next to a tavern as they fish so that they can enjoy some meat, not miss a catch, but they need to be careful or they'll lose their new catch to a gator. Home of Hognur'Gor is a village located east of Central City and is always pelted by torrential rains and always dark, almost as dark as night, even when it is daytime. Because of this, there is always thunder and lightning. This means that the Sil'nyy of this village had to build their homes with makeshift lightning rods to prevent their homes and the surrounding village from setting fire. Due to the constant flooding, these buildings were built on stone stilts to keep them away from the invading water, with rope ladders that could be unfolded so that the Sil'nyy can get back to the ground. Roofs are in a pyramid shape, made of hardened clay tiles to help filter the water down into gutters, which routes the water back to the earth below. The walls and floor themselves are made of wooden plates, with gaps in the floor in case water leaks into the house so that it can escape. A lot of the trees and foliage in the area help with drainage. Home of Urukgar borders the area that Hognur'Gor resides in and is the southernmost village. There is a dock that leads straight to the same swamp northwest of the village. This village is mostly surrounded by fir trees and naturally growing toxic hueberry bushes. Thankfully, there is a special type of deer that lives in the area that can expel the toxins as they eat it, so game is fairly abundant. Aside from wild animals to hunt, there's also a community garden that the residents have been taking care of together. Not only does it have beautiful and exotic flowers, but also a lot of crops that can be picked from. The buildings here enjoy warm sunlight almost 24/7, and thus have been built to reflect light so that the insides of them can remain a cool temperature. Flat roofing lines the village's buildings and are filled with gravel, helping protect the underlying layers from the sun. Walls of the buildings are mostly made of wood, but some are made of stone. Home of Ushmog is incredibly secluded and somewhat on the spooky side, because the small northern village is always covered in fog that is so thick that light can barely be seen through it. All the buildings are made of carved stone with rough wooden doors and open windows. The village itself is located on a hill, surrounded mostly by stone and dirt. At the very center is a shared well with taller stone walls than normal to prevent people from falling in, aside from other Sil'nyy. Very little foliage is scattered about and usually includes dead trees and a few bushes here and there. The Sil'nyy that live here often have to go on long hunting trips just to get food to feed their families. There aren't many buildings other than homes here, as visitors are sparse and those who live there often don't leave the house unless they need to, the fog being too dangerous to risk fun in. Kittah has a Patreon for those who are interested in donating. We have 6 different tiers with a multitude of benefits. All proceeds go to my construction crew, advertisements, and any necessities that we may need to continue the project. For more information, check the Patreon link in the description below. I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to my patron Craft Kraken. Thank you so much for donating. Most Sil'nyy die from a young age, be it from wounds not being tended to fast enough, those same wounds being infected, or a combination of wounds, infection, while an illness befalls a Sil'nyy. Despite the fact there is a Sil'nyy clan with the sole purpose of saving lives, not every Sil'nyy can be saved. It doesn't help that they're constantly warring against the Hellraisers, not because they have to, but because they find it fun and a great way to prove their strength. Dying in a blaze of glory is something for a Sil'nyy to be proud of. Each clan has a specialty, a craft or trade that they are good at. One does not automatically join a clan by being birthed by clan members. They have to earn their spot in the clan by taking the trial of age at the age of 13, and it's not guaranteed that they'll join the same clan as their parents. Should they fail the trial of age, they will be considered Ogudarjan or exiled. They are still eligible to participate in fights in the arena within Central City, but there are no redos for the Trial of Age. By default, another race adopted into the clans would not be able to participate in the Trial of Age, but there are 2 exceptions. If a parent of the adopted can convince the 4 masters that their child is a Sil'nyy, not by blood but by heart, or if the parents can get a representative to take their child's place in the Trial of Age. The representative has to be of 13 years of age and a Sil'nyy, and they must give up their own chance of joining a clan. This means that once the trial is over, the representative will be considered Hognur'Gor, as if they themselves failed the trial. The ability to use strong magic or even turn into a dragon can be utilized during the Trial of Age. However, doing so right at the beginning of a test instead of using it only when needed is frowned upon. It's not that it's considered an unfair advantage, it's just the Sil'nyy way. They aren't anti-magic like the Artuna Kaikareg, but more of a if you've got the strength, why not use it type of people. If a hybrid of a Sil'nyy is born with one of the clan's villages, then they are welcome to participate in the Trial of Age. Because they can be riders and have stronger magic than a purebred Sil'nyy, it would be considered dishonorable to use under most circumstances, especially if they were to use their magic for long-distance attacks during the test. The trials are judged not just by being able to pass them, but by showing willingness, skillfulness, and honor, among many other assets. Even if someone manages to pass every single test, they could still fail should they lack quality of character. If one shows good quality of character, then they have a better chance of passing the Trial of Age, even if they fail all 4 tests. That being said, passing one test and failing the rest can guarantee a spot in the clan that the past test represents. If one passes multiple, they will be given the honor of getting to choose to join which clan they would prefer. If one fails all tests but manages to pass the Trial of Age based on character, the 4 masters will decide where to place them. A Sil'nyy can choose to skip over tests and only take one, but there is less honor in doing so, and it's sometimes even considered cowardly. The Geographical are the clan of warriors. They recognize strength, courage, ability to handle fog-brained, should they have it, and determination. Their test is for the trial goers to fight against a real Geographical warrior in a 1 versus 1 fight, and either defeat them, show a good fight, or last as long as possible. What makes this more difficult is that they are doing this on an obstacle course, which provides multiple ways that they can easily fail the test. The clan of healing are the Hognur'Gor. They believe in being able to focus, remain calm, quick thinking, and to provide aid in the most dire of circumstances. You don't have permission to die mindset. Their test consists of a mannequin to be treated. Their wounds are marked on the body and there are a list of illnesses that must be cured under an unforgiving time limit, while also having to deal with being attacked by whatever hostile predator, usually about the size of a dog in comparison to the Sil'nyy, is set loose on the group of young Sil'nyy taking the test. Ingredients and equipment are always provided, but they are sometimes damaged, which requires that unlucky Sil'nyy to improvise. Urukgar are known as a clan of tacticians. They value their strategizing defenses, planning, and even sabotaging their enemies. The test that the young Sil'nyy are required to pass is to plan out a route and successfully deliver the final parcel. They start out with 1 parcel, trade it for another at home of Urukgar, take the new parcel to home of Geographica, and trade it for another, then to take it to home of Hognur'Gor, and then to home of Ushmog, and back to Central City, where the route begins and ends. Along the way, they have to avoid traps and ambushes by Sil'nyy, who are especially hired for the Trial of Age, and also need to watch out for sabotage by their fellow trial-goers, who are taking the test with them. The Ushmog are the clan of smiths. They expect good craftsmanship, durability, and practicality. They are required to make their own armor and weapon, materials provided by the Ushmog, in a certain amount of days. Then they must prove that the armor can take a lot of hits while wearing it to prove it's well made. Their weapon is first tested by smacking it against a rock. If it falls apart, they are given the handle to fight with. If it doesn't, then they can use their weapon in a fight. With their custom armor on and their weapon in hand, the young Sil'nyy must fight a beast. Failing a specific clan test does not mean that you won't be able to join that clan. The 4 masters can recognize when someone has the qualities of their clan. This can happen if a young Sil'nyy fails at making good armor and weapons, but can take out the beast without them. The Tlakaelel master would love to have them. If a young Sil'nyy couldn't save the mannequin during the healing test, but was able to trap whatever predators were released so that the rest of the Sil'nyy were able to pass, the Urukgar master might want them. No records are held of whether or not the trial goers have failed or passed the trial of age. It's up to the clans to remember these facts come the next trial of age. In fact, it's up to the clan members to remember their own histories and pass down stories or religious views by word of mouth. It's not that writing is forbidden or that they can't write. It's just another way of the Sil'nyy tech deal. They've never written anything down before, so why should they now? There are two common mindsets within the Sil'nyy race when it comes to other people's religions and beliefs. The first is that some of the Sil'nyy are incredibly small-minded and rude when it comes to other beliefs. They don't get violent, but they will laugh and make fun of them. The other view is that they think that everyone believes the same thing they do, just viewed in a different way. Even though SefChol City isn't the home of a clan, there are multiple clans members living here instead of within their designated villages. It's believed that this keeps peace among the clans, especially since SefChol City is also where the arena is located. Every week, there are little riff-raff brawls or fights for practice. Other races aside from Sil'nyy are allowed to join, but during these small fights, there are still rules that must be followed. 1. Must be 14 and up. 2. Long-range weapons are banned. 3. Magic of all kinds can only be used by other races, minus long range, as it's not the Sil'nyy way. 4. Flying is only allowed by races that have the ability to. 5. Use of outside substances or drugs are not allowed, because of our terms of service. 6. Boosts from potions are also banned unless it is a weaker race that is using it, especially if it makes the fight more interesting. Once a month, there is a more serious tournament, the Way of the Sil'nyy, also known as the Competition of Strength, where a single winner can walk away with a glorious prize. Usually something donated by one of the 4 clans. Geographical often offers some of their trophies, one through taking down strong opponents, tusk of a large tough bear, core of a hellraiser, or even a weapon taken off an opponent killed in battle. Hognur'Gor donates some of their more expensive potions that were brewed with rare ingredients, or a large supply of their cheaper ones. Urukgar donate maps and enchanted items, and Ushmog donate high-quality armor or weapons they made themselves. There are similar rules to the weekly brawls, but because this is a more serious tournament, there are more rules and expansions of old ones. 1. Must be 18 or older. Can be any race. Can be any clan or lack thereof. 2. All rounds are 1 versus 1. 3. Long-range weapons are still banned. 4. Short range or melee magic is allowed. Long range is not. Fog brain is only allowed to be used against other Sil'nyy. 5. Transforming into dragon is banned. 6. Flying is allowed but can only be used by the races that have it. 7. No use of outside substances or drugs. Boosts from potions are allowed from the weaker races. Potions that promote healing can be used in between rounds but cannot be used during, even by Sil'nyy. 8. If a challenger cannot heal enough of their more serious injuries prior to their next round, they are automatically disqualified from the tournament. I think a bunch of minor injuries is fine. Those who join the tournament, or even those who enjoy participating in the weekly brawls, can set up tents outside of the arena and stay as long as they like. These challengers are welcomed with open arms from the Sil'nyy. Sometimes the Sil'nyy that live in SefChol City make free food for the guests, sometimes even just for their favorite outside participant, as they believe it will help them win. Sometimes the Way of the Sil'nyy tournament is used by the 4 masters settle any beef among their clans, or even used for internal clan issues. A regular clan member can go up against their own clan's master. The losing side either has to set down or stop what they were doing that caused the problem in the first place. Should a challenged Sil'nyy refuse, the rest of the clans will frown upon them. They dishonored themselves. The Sil'nyy that live in Geographical are surprisingly competitive when it comes to fishing and taking down gators. They often boast of how many fish they catch, what kinds of fish they catch, how big their fish are, and how many full-grown alligators they manage to kill in revenge for taking some of their fish. They're even known to bring these up when trying to win a verbal argument with someone, whether or not the other person is another Sil'nyy. Any fish they catch, or gator, they slay. They separate it into 2 portions. The first portion is to feed their family, and the second is to be sold at the fish market. Sil'nyy at Geographica are very picky when it comes to eating fish. They have to be freshly caught, as in the last 24 hours, no part should be missing when the fish is bought, and they should be thoroughly examined for parasites. Some fish sold in the market do not meet this standard. It's up to the buyer to inspect the fish. Gator hide is often used to make luggage compartments, belts, and is used as a substitute for leather in many cases. Sometimes gator hide is sold to the Ushmog for help in creation of new armor or weapons. Gator hide can also be used in creating clothing, if it goes through an alchemical process first to make it softer. The ingredients needed are often found naturally growing around the marsh. Sil'nyy that can transform into dragons are often paid handsomely to dive for mouthfuls of fish. Any fish that remain undamaged during this process will be traded, and any fish damaged will still be paid for, but the dragon may keep. Damaged fish include anything that can't be sold in the market. Hybrids that are part Sil'nyy can also be useful. especially those that are good with magic, like help trap fish, hunt gator, keep fish fresher for longer, even after they're dead. But it's up to the hybrid to find their niche. They sell the talents that they know they are good at and refuse to perform anything that they aren't. When a young Sil'nyy or hybrid catches their first fish or manages to take down their first alligator, their actions are celebrated. It's mostly just the individual's families that participate at first, but word will spread quickly among the villagers, and soon the whole clan will talk about it. This child, oldest being 17 to be able to participate, is often given small rewards from their fellow villagers, such as getting a real rod for fishing, or free types of bait, or even special lures. It's dangerous to leave one's homestead and home of Hognur'Gor. The floodwaters can get pretty steep and violent, so those who wade through the dangerous waters need to have a lot of leg strength to keep themselves from toppling over and being swept away. The waters are most often knee-deep, but they can recede every now and again. While most Sil'nyy carry a rucksack on their back full of all their supplies, the Sil'nyy around here use little wagons with a little torch on it that can float like boats when needed, since the floods are so unpredictable. Young ones and pregnant women are often required to stay home until a certain age or until after giving birth. The women who gave birth often carry their babies in a covered basket strapped to their head so that the child will not drown if they have to be carried through floodwaters. The child needs to be moved from building to building, but the child is too big for the baby basket. The child will be placed in a floating wagon. The children of Hognur'Gor are extremely obedient due to the dangers of the environment that they live in. Families' homesteads are often built next to each other, which allows small rope bridges to be built between the buildings. This makes traveling between them much easier, especially if a practitioner or nursery is needed for their child. That being said, these bridges can still be dangerous. They are high off the ground, wet, slippery from growing algae, and even eroded and soft from the constant downpour. The wood needs to be constantly replaced and even scrubbed when the rain finally lets up. Sil'nyy who live here must have a collection of water-resistant furs and leathers or enchanted covers for their bedding, as it gets extremely cold here. There have been times where entire families have been found frozen to death because they didn't have enough blankets or any potions that can help regulate their temperature. It's an obvious, unspoken rule that many who are new to the clan will often forget, at the cost of their own lives. Aside from families socializing with each other being made easy because of these bridges, they don't really socialize with the rest of the village outside of necessities. Some Sil'nyy will often create hunting and gathering groups, usually by a light signal via their floating wagon that means, "I'm going out," which lets the other Sil'nyy know that they can join. Gossip happens a lot during hunting and gathering, as this is the only time socializing is often done. During hunting and gathering, they not only collect food, but also ingredients for potions. Because there isn't much wildlife in the immediate area, Hognur'Gor clan members often have to hunt for game outside of their own village, usually in another clan's territory. The other Sil'nyy understand their circumstances and often welcome them with open arms. However, some mean-spirited Sil'nyy or new master of the clan can revoke permission to hunt on their grounds. This can result in a fight amongst all the clans, as the Hognur'Gor are known to rotate their hunted grounds so that they don't take too much food away from the other clans. If another hunted ground off limits, this will reduce their rotation to just 2 places, which will result in less food for both the Hognur'Gor and the remaining clans. The ground is very fertile, the weather is always nice, and they hardly have to deal with any predators in the area. Because of this, the Sil'nyy of the other clans often consider them weak because their lives are so easy. However, the Sil'nyy of the home of Urukgar are not only knowledgeable about their own land, but also have knowledge on all the territories. They know of plants, animals, ingredients, dangers, and many other things. If an outsider were to visit any of the clans first, it would be this one so that they would be well prepared for the rest of their journey through Thumac's domain. Urukgar is surprisingly small despite its sunny weather. Because of this, every Sil'nyy and all their offspring know each other by name. Outsiders can find the villagers unsettling because the villagers avoid small talk. They're more used to people coming and going due to the abundant resources in the area, and so talking is not their strong suit. They're still kind and will give answers if asked and help where needed. It takes a while for some of them to form proper sentences, as they're not the kind of people who blurt out things, and instead think really hard on what they want to say. Their community garden is popular among the clans, some of which donate foreign seeds to the villagers of Urukgar to help expand the options for fresh fruits and vegetables. These fresh produce, when ripe, are often traded for other goods. The tavern and inn in the village even trade some freshly cooked meals to the keepers of the garden so that they could use the produce. Sometimes the keepers of the garden will offer a free fruit or vegetable to passers-by, mostly those who intend to stay at the inn for a while as a welcome to our humble village gift. Keepers of the garden are the ones who do the upkeep, tilling the soil, planting, watering, pulling weeds, etc. In short, they're just gardeners with a fancy title given to them by their fellow villagers. And they don't just plant produce. Flowers can also be seen in their little community garden. Anyone can be a keeper of the garden, but only a select few actually want to do it. They're the ones who get to dictate what is traded for what guests get free produce, etc. This village does not usually use common eating utensils and prefer daggers to stab and pick up their food, or just simply eat with their fingers. Sometimes they will even lift an entire plate or bowl and drink directly out of that. This doesn't mean that there aren't any Sil'nyy in this village that have common eating utensils. It's usually just specific households, and they are often used for any guests they may have in the future. Because of the lack of utensils, most of their food is made to be eaten by hand. Your tavern will often sell freshly baked cheese bread, hunks of cheese, sausage links, and fruits all throughout the day. The home of Urukgar has visitors from both the Hognur'Gor clan and the Geographical. Hognur'Gor like to hunt the grounds for their Zimbinaka bucks, the deer that like to graze on the toxic uberry bushes, avoiding the does because of the poison flowing through their meat. Geographical have been known to hang out at the dock, casually fishing and conversing with Urukgar and their visitors. Sometimes the Geographical will even take care of any alligator problems, should they hear them appearing near the docks where Urukgar children play. Ushmog is a dying village. Between the thick fog and the nightmarish creatures rearing their ugly heads at all hours of the day, it's become too dangerous for visitors. The current condition of Ushmog would normally scare people off, so unless a really brave warrior or a very stupid traveler happen to come upon the place, there's just no visitors. Despite the lack of outsiders, the Ushmog are very determined to prevent their village from becoming an abandoned territory by refusing to leave their home. The fog wasn't always there, though. The fog rolled in shortly before the Hellraisers made an appearance. The Sil'nyy can't figure out why, and at first, they cared very little about the why. But between the hostile creatures that had appeared, and rumors being spread and misinterpreted, they had become paranoid of what the next bad thing was going to happen to their little village. Because of this, any visitors that they do get, the Ushmog are already suspicious of them. They still try to be nice, but the trust is non-existent. Although this clan and village are the Ushmog, some of the Geographical are stationed here to protect them. After the fog appeared, a deadly creature known as a Fulero, an apex predator, moved in. The Sil'nyy believe it has something to do with the fact that the fog helps dim the light of the sun, and the creature, though blind, was terribly sensitive to the sunlight. It includes the idea that the creatures live in caves nearby and now have become a problem as they are now appearing frequently around the village. Due to their appearance, music is now forbidden in the village as it entices the creatures to come closer as they hunt by sound. Practitioners of Urukgar are directly involved with Ushmog, much like warriors of Geographical. They use the Ushmog's travels to Selgamed, which were originally used for the sole purpose of hunting and gathering, as they were too proud of a race to impede on the other clans' territories, to help restock on critical resources for the rest of the clans. In short, the Urukgar collect and plan to trade excess resources from other clans via the Ushmog for resources that they are running low on within Selgamed. Offspring born to the clan of Ushmog are taught, from a very young age, to work the smelter. They help the older members create weapons and armor overseen by a mentor. They keep the fire stoked, how hot to make the fire based on the metal, and deliver the proper equipment to the smithies. Older children, usually those who have passed the trial of age, often send out to the other clans to retrieve hides, furs, and bones.